Monday morning. Ladies and gentlemen, it is officially Monday, April 29th, 2024. And boy, I know what you guys are all thinking out there. April came and went in the blink of an eye. And next thing you know, we are in the home stretch. We are at third base right now, and we're approaching the home plate to the start, the initiation of the 2024 hurricane season. And the reason I start this video with that is because we are going to have recurring updates starting as of May 1st. So give it a couple more days. We're going to be making more appearances here on the channel, whether it be these hard segments or in our live streams discussing what the tropics look like, especially as we get closer to the second half of May and the official calendar start day of the 2024 hurricane season. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are making history on the channel today. We are back for a full-fledged Weather Center segment. Thank you very much, each and every one of you, for taking some time out of your day to join me this beautiful Monday morning. I hope everything is great in your world, and my heart, thoughts, and prayers go out to each and every single individual out there in the Great Plains, from Nebraska, Iowa, down towards the south through Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, wherever it is that you may reside, where you saw some really significant impacts over the last several days from that severe weather onslaught. That severe weather onslaught is the best way to describe it. Our most aggressive, our most substantial severe weather outbreak of the 2024 severe weather season to date. Lord willing, we don't break that threshold anytime soon. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's on the immediate horizon. We are not done yet, folks. Before we get started, please like and share this video if you do like these routine weather forecasts. I know they haven't been very routine, but I know we've had a lot of live streams to break down and discuss exactly what it is that's going on out there. So if you do enjoy this Weather Center segment, this official video, as opposed to the live streams, feel free to drop that like, share this information around, and hit that subscribe button as we get ready to wander in to the 2024 hurricane season. And of course, we can't forget that we are approaching the back half of tornado season. So still plenty to talk about, plenty to dive into. And with that being said, let's get right in here. So we're going to take a broad look at our water vapor chart. Here's our upper low and our surface frontal system that continues to make its way up towards Minnesota, moving through the Dakotas right now. We don't have too much in the way of significant weather associated with. A lot of it is still down over here. We have a ton of early morning convection that is held together through eastern Texas, now moving across Louisiana, Arkansas, more or less being supported by our warm Gulf of Mexico waters. That is exactly where the moisture feed is in place. And to give you a bit of backstory, I'll tell you right now, this is going to be the picture more or less for the next few weeks. So don't be surprised if we do not get a single day, if not maybe a couple of days in between those Storm Prediction Center charts highlighting a threat of some nature for severe weather, because we now currently have an open Gulf. Take a look at this overall long wave ridge that's just stationary over the eastern half of the United States. That, and I'll show you at 850 millibars, that is what's going to allow all that warm, moist, unstable air to just remain in place. Even if some of these frontal systems knock it back down towards the south and east, it is going to come right back up thanks to our upper level ridge and our surface high pressure that's going to help to continue to resurge all that return flow out of the Gulf of Mexico, out of the Caribbean, out of Central America, all our hot maritime tropical air that's just going to continue to create that layer of instability for these storm systems coming across the Rockies to run headfirst into and ignite our severe weather events. As I'd said, this is a look at our most recent Storm Prediction Center updates, and truthfully, if you were to scroll through all the charts, minus obviously the days 4 through 8, we do have a designation already, I believe, on our day 4 or day 5 chart for what's coming at the end of this week. We'll talk about that here in a moment, but like I said at the beginning of this video, guys, do not be surprised if we continue to see general thunderstorms, if not levels 1 and 2, highlighted somewhere, especially through the Great Plains from the Dakotas, Minnesota, all the way down through Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, trying to propagate further off to the east through the Ohio, Mississippi River valleys, towards the mid-Atlantic region and the southeast. It's been fairly quiet down here in Florida, particularly. Florida has been living up to its name, the Sunshine State, for a considerable window of time at this point, to where we are starting to see those drought conditions return for the western and central portions of the peninsula, which is not good news. We really need our rainy season to kick on and give it about another 3 to 4 weeks, and we will start to see those sea breezes take effect, and Lord willing, especially with the loss of El Nino, we will start to see our rains kick back up here in the Sunshine State, and we'll get more of those daytime thunderstorms to help keep those drought conditions at bay. But with that being said, we have a level 1 risk across the Gulf Coast. As I highlighted, that early morning convection is going to continue to slowly work its way off to the east. We aren't expecting too widespread or scattered coverage of our strong to severe thunderstorms. They will remain in place, modifying along that Gulf coastline thanks to our Gulf of Mexico and the surge of moisture being pulled out ahead of our long, draped across the Midwest, the lower Great Lakes, the Ohio, Mississippi valleys, down towards the Gulf of Mexico, the cold front that is working its way through, hoping helping to lift all that convective instability and create those thunderstorms. Day 2, very familiar spot, unfortunately, for those folks up there who are already trying to start their recovery efforts. If you can find a reliable source to make a donation or to support the relief cause that are going up out there, please do so. We do not have that on this channel as of yet, but I'm actually working with someone I know from work who's putting me in or plugging me into some sources that'll help get me involved with more disaster relief efforts to hopefully travel and get out there to help folks not only afflicted by tornado season, but eventually, inevitably, God forbid, the hurricane season. So we have a level 2 risk for much of southeastern Dakota, the eastern half of Nebraska, east quadrant, or the northeast quadrant, I should say, of Kansas, Minnesota, Iowa, and Missouri are back under the gun for severe weather yet again. And that level 1 risk drapes back down all the way through central and western Texas thanks to the dry line. The dry line is a very pronounced feature this time of year, and that is going to be one of our main triggers on a day-to-day for some significant convection and strong supercell action through Oklahoma, Kansas, and especially Texas. That thing's going to wobble back and forth pretty consistently as we go throughout the day today and moving forward for pretty much a good duration of May. Day 3, much of the same. Again, this is almost like a repeat of what we just had. We had our level 2 risk drift down towards the greater portions of Kansas. A large majority of Kansas is highlighted at this point. Western parts of Missouri, southwestern Iowa, as well as Oklahoma and Texas are just going to remain under the gun for some significant weather. And this is going to be the song and dance, guys, like I said, going forward. Don't be surprised if this doesn't change. You're probably going to ask yourself, is this guy showing me the same charts again and again? No, I promise you I'm not. It's just unfortunately we're at that point in the year, late April into May, where everything is just perfectly in alignment to keep that severe weather threat going and going and going. We're going to do something a little different. We're not going to jump into the models quite yet. I want to start doing this a little differently and highlighting what it is we have going on out there, do a little bit of initialization and verification before we get into our forecast models. I think it's an injustice to you guys who are watching to focus solely on forecast models and give you the future as opposed to what's going on out there right now and simply taking things forward so you can track it personally as well through these videos and other weather sources you tune into. So we're looking at our 500 millibar meso analysis. Here is our upper low and our surface low refraction down at the low levels of the environment, helping to trigger off all of our significant thunderstorm activity that's been lingering through Louisiana and Arkansas this morning. We have a good amount of shortwave energy along the southeastern quadrant of our trough and our low height center that's trying to keep some significant thunderstorm action going on up there, but truthfully, we have locked it off altogether thanks to 2 separate frontal systems and cold sectors that have wandered through that area. So outside of some isolated thunderstorm coverage, some rocking and rolling of our thunder and lightning out there, where we're not going to see anything too substantial, and there really isn't a huge risk for any type of severe weather outside of maybe some occasional frequent cloud-to-ground lightning, as well as your convective winds if those showers do gain a little bit of updraft intensity and rain out in your local area. This is what we're going to be paying attention to as we move through time. This next shortwave trough, this major shortwave trough, as a matter of fact, you can see some really good PVA and NVA couplets, positive vorticity and negative vorticity couplets, indicative of that shortwave propagation at 500 millibars, supported by a Jetmax. If you look at these wind barbs right at the upper portion, or upper left portion of the chart, there's your Jetmax coming in, getting ready to dig this trough down southward across the Pacific Northwest, the Intermountain West, and the Great Basin of the Northern and Central Rockies. This is going to be our next big weather player as it sweeps east-southeast into the Central Rockies and then emerges over the Central Plains to do its usual rigmarole as we see this time of year. This is precisely why we're not going to see too much significant thunderstorm coverage up there near the Great Lakes, the lower Midwest, because of the fact that a lot of our significant activity has been sandwiched back down across the Gulf of Mexico. If you look at these higher theta E values, and you'll know if you follow this channel quite a bit, I swear by the theta E. We're looking at our analyzed theta E as of 12 Zulu this morning. Here's our surface low now down up over southern Minnesota, moving into Wisconsin. And as you can see, we have some modified theta values right across the southeast portion of this low. Really good shortwave activity in the upper levels, but our low to mid levels are not really poised to give us that substantial, robust thunderstorm ignition and that ingredient, if you will, to keep them self-sustaining to produce significant hazards of very heavy rainfall, convective winds, any kind of hail, or, God forbid, tornadic producers. We're not going to have that today. We're taking a break, and the threat is going to backbuild to your west if you reside in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan. I've been seeing a lot of questions about Indiana, Ohio particularly. Same thing with Michigan. I know you guys were getting pummeled first half of April, late March, but we have taken a break. We have subsided for the time being. We'll let you know if that threat comes back. A lot of our most significant unstable and buoyant values are going to be right along the Gulf Coast. You can see them trying to creep into Louisiana, Mississippi. That is why we are seeing that continuous line, that quasi-linear convective system, as the meteorological terminology goes, moving eastward across our Gulf Coast states. You can already see some residual theta values being pulled in across the Rockies in the wake of that next system getting ready to come down. And as this sets itself up, notice we have really good anticyclonic flow over the eastern half of the U.S. Once this front can work its way far enough downstream of this general quadrant, Tornado and Dixie Alley, we're going to see the gates open up again, and those theta values from the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, the Bay of Campeche are going to move to the north and get the area primed once again for that thunderstorm ignition as we go through Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Now, as the famous James Spann likes to say, model fans, let's go ahead and take a look at our 0Z Euro. We're filming this first thing in the morning, so we're not going to have any new model data just yet. We'll keep you updated as we go through the day today, and then tomorrow evening when we do our live stream, obviously we'll have more data to look at. But right now, we're just going to kind of broad brush it, sweep through to take a look at what's happening. There's our trough oriented north to south over the heart of the United States, moving from the Dakotas, Montana, Wyoming, down scraping through the periphery of the Mexico-United States border and moving east, supporting our upper level low. Here's our weak remnant Jetmax that's trying to keep those short waves and that upper level activity strong as it moves into the Great Lakes. But again, like I said, we don't have the ingredients down in the low levels or the first half of the atmosphere to get things going. As you quickly take it through time, like I said, looking at that shortwave analysis chart or the vorticity analysis chart back a couple panels ago, here comes that next Jetmax screaming across the Pacific Northwest, the Great Basin, moving almost zonal west to east fashion before we finally get that amplitude to increase in our trough. Now, this thing is not forecast to dig as far south, so we're probably going to have two modes of our severe weather once again, just like we saw yesterday and about 24 hours prior to the tail end of our event yesterday. We're going to have our frontal, our synoptic forcing up to the north with a low pressure, our short waves at 500 millibars, and our upper trough that's going to be moving through the first half, or I should say the northern half of the United States, and down across the south. Our very pivotal feature for this time of year, our dry line, is going to be pushed further and further to the east thanks to this frontal introduction across the northern half of the U.S., and that's what's going to help to spark our southern mode. Our Texas, Oklahoma thunderstorms are going to be more dry line induced, whereas the first half through Kansas, Nebraska, the Dakotas, moving towards Missouri and Iowa are going to be more so Jetmax, jet-induced, and our low-pressure-induced. You can see this if we move over to our 500 millibar vorticity. You can see all the shortwave activity moving through the contour gradient pattern, sweeping across the Pacific Northwest, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and just out ahead of it, you can see very gratuitous diffluence, the spreading of the air in the upper levels, and what that does is helps to increase our upward vertical motion in the low levels, helps to tap into what kind of surface or just above the surface instability or cape we may have in the low levels of the environment and get those actions in motion. And as this continues to move across, you can see that the second trough is what's going to dig in, and there you have it. There's your wonderful shortwave or PVA couplet, positive vorticity indicating a really good substantial area of upward vertical velocities with our diffluence just out ahead of it. At this point in time, this is 6Z on the 3rd of May. This is more or less just shortly after all the main event has occurred over Nebraska, Kansas, and off towards their east as well. This is more or less giving you a broad look at exactly what's going to stir the pot for our northern United States. And then down across the south, notice there really isn't a too much identifiable at 500 millibars of the upper levels. That's because we're going to have that surface dry line feature and a little bit of cold air advection bleeding out of the Rockies from this frontal system that's going to help to get that kind of mode going. And to give you kind of an idea of why it is we're going to be in place and seeing this again and again and again on a repetitive basis, you guys are not going to catch a break just yet, at least in the foreseeable near to far distant future in terms of what our model data can show us. There's going to be some wiggling and wobbling, of course, but notice all these red anomalies over the eastern half of the United States. This is going to be a nice upper ridge, a subtropical / polar ridge that's going to just continue to marinate over the eastern half of the United States with its apex over Ontario, Quebec of Canada, all the way back down towards the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. This upper feature is what's going to support very hot subtropical high pressure down towards the low levels, and it's going to continue to mix up all that maritime equatorial air across Texas, Oklahoma, feed it into Kansas, Nebraska, the Great Plains, as we would typically see this time of year. And notice just in time to catch these blue anomalies as they sweep across the northern and central Rockies, they're going to connect over the Great Plains, Tornado Alley, hence the name, and that's what's going to help to keep a continuous ignition of thunderstorms thunderstorms in place over you guys' location for, honestly, like I said, the foreseeable short to near distant future. 850 millibars does a fantastic job of highlighting this. If you look right even as we start the chart, this is 12Z valid for essentially when I'm shooting this video. You can see a really good anti-cyclone position right off the mid-Atlantic coast, a really good robust low-level jet. Not really going to help with severe weather activity, but it's just showing you that warm air advection. We don't want to solely look at our low-level jet as a severe weather identifier. We want to look at that more or less as a pivotal ingredient for our severe weather. When you have low-level jets like these coming out of the south moving north, what that tells you is you have really hot air more than likely on the east side of that jet, and on the west side or the back side of it you have cooler, drier air, and that's why you're getting that squeezing, that funneling fire hose effect of our wind flow. Low-level jets behave exactly the same as our upper-level jets. Temperature discontinuity, a temperature gradient more or less alongside the general physics of the Earth's rotation are going to create these winds, and that's why I like to bring this up not only to describe where it is our severe weather threat is going to be, but where our more intense warm air advection is going to occur. And even right here, Tuesday, if you notice on our SPC charts, we don't have a widespread highlight for enhanced or moderate severe weather, but we already have a low-level jet that's establishing itself over Texas all the way up to the border of Canada. That's just indicative of that anti-cyclone off the east coast that's going to keep pumping that return flow across the plains, across the plains, across the plains on a day-to-day basis. And then finally, as our next system begins to undergo genesis, there it is right there, Thursday overnight, moving into Thursday morning. You can see our low-level jet really intensifies. Now, this would be an indication of possible severe weather because you have a low here, which means you have cold air seeping in on the backside, dry air likely being funneled in across the desert southwest to support our dry line feature over West Texas, West Oklahoma, and then we have our really good funneling, our warm conveyor, as everyone likes to say, supplying us with that instability, warm, moist air. Our dew points, our relative humidity are going to go up, precipitable water values are going to be there for that strong, intense thunderstorm, supercell activity, and so on and so forth. And then last but not least, I'm going to show you guys exactly what we have in place using our forecasted Theta E brought to us by the NAM. You could already see our severe weather sector is going to be from the lower Great Lakes region, if I can get my pen to cooperate, lower Great Lakes region through to about western Kansas, southern Nebraska, and then back down towards the south, right around where our dry line is expected to start to slowly shift east. Our greatest severe weather action is going to be occurring right in through here, and then once our low can come down and begin to stir the pot a little bit, some of our theta values are going to surge a little bit further to the north, which is why I'm glad that they have Nebraska and Iowa highlighted for severe weather once again. And as these systems translate off to the east, your coverage is going to go with it. And that's all she wrote, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much if you took some time out of your Monday to tune in for this Weather Center segment. We'll see you again tomorrow for our next live discussion. And then on May 1st, I believe that's Wednesday, we're going to go ahead and not only look at some Climo data, but we're going to do a full-fledged, long, very long-winded discussion on our hurricane season, because for those of you out there complaining about talking about the hurricane season, we're not quite there yet. Well, guess what? It's going to be May 1st, which means we are in the last 30-some-odd days before we start to see a recurrence of tropical activity, tropical updates, and our final preliminary forecasts are going to be rolling out from our final officials out there to include National Hurricane Center, and they will be back to bring us more recurring updates on May 15th, so stay tuned for that, ladies and gentlemen. If you liked what you saw today, please smash that like button, share it around to the folks you believe who know and care about this kind of information, who could use it in their day-to-day, especially as we continue to ride out the backside of severe weather season, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you very much for your gratuitous and amazing support, ladies and gentlemen. This is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.